If we haven't met before, I'm Sarah, an end-of-life planning advocate, normalizing conversations about end-of-life and estate planning before those conversations are necessary. In nearly every case I come across where somebody talks about death, dying, planning for death, or starting an estate plan, it is hedged with apologies. I'm sorry for being so morbid. I'm sorry for making you think about this. I'm sorry for being so depressing. At the very least, a God forbid is added to anything mentioning the possibility of death. And then, as soon as the death-related thing was raised and apologized for, it's moved on from as quickly as possible. I won't do that. I will not apologize for talking about death or for making you consider your death and your estate plan. There isn't much in life that is guaranteed, but I can guarantee that one day you will die. And when you die, you will have stuff. And that someone is going to have to deal with your stuff. So I will not apologize for acknowledging and talking about the one thing that every person who has ever walked the earth has in common. That said, I also won't dwell on the details. I'm a paperwork person and a logistics person. I am not equipped to be the one to talk you through the emotional issues you might have with the idea of dying. So, while I'll ask you to consider the general concept of your death, there are very few times that I will do the see yourself in your coffin kind of stuff. I'm not equipped for that. If you are interested in learning more about the emotional aspects of considering your death, the company Going with Grace has an online course called Mortal that I would highly recommend. A link to the course will be in the description. It's social conditioning for us to talk about death in hushed tones if it's talked about at all. And that starts a vicious cycle. It's one of those things that I get, but I don't really get. I understand the impulse. Considering your death is hard. It can be depressing. It raises all sorts of difficult issues. It can bring up all sorts of memories and feelings from your past and the people in your life who have died. But ignoring it keeps in the shadows, and it makes it harder to discuss or to plan for, which only increases the chance that people won't make plans, which in turn ensures that those people will have a harder time after your death, since they'll not only have to deal with the emotional fallout of your death, but also the logistics fallout, since they won't have any information to work with. They won't know if you have a will. They won't know what you want in a funeral. They won't know if you want to be buried or cremated. It's a vicious cycle where not talking about it makes the experience worse, which makes us much less likely to talk about it. And it goes on and on. Making a plan is a kindness. Completing an estate plan is a gift from you to your people. It's a good thing. It will give them space to grieve. They'll be able to be with each other after you die and not trying to figure out if you had a will or what your email password is. And writing a will or completing an advance care directive or living will doesn't jinx you. Writing a will isn't like watching the video in The Ring, where watching the video means you're going to die in 7 days. Completing an advanced care directive does not mean an accident is going to happen. Being prepared is good. Being prepared is necessary. What you gain by not planning isn't worth it. Sure, not doing any estate planning will prevent you from having to consider who you want to get your record collection or after you die, or if you want a feeding tube if you're ever incapacitated. But not considering that yourself doesn't mean no one will ever have to consider it. It just pushes those choices and those decisions onto somebody else and ensures your people will have to endure months of stress, confusion, and attorney's fees later for fixing and managing what you didn't want to manage while you're alive. And that's assuming things can be managed at all. After you die, there are some things that even the lawyers can't change or fix if you didn't make plans ahead of time. So I am not going to apologize for talking about death or for asking you to consider at least generally the concept of your own death. And I certainly won't apologize for asking you to start an estate plan. Not only will I not apologize for making you consider death, I've decided to make it my job. I will do everything in my power to make sure you consider it. Why? Harsh truth time. You are going to die. Maybe tomorrow, maybe in 60 years, but it's where we are all headed. And when you die, someone will have to wrap up your life. For you to have never considered that, to not make any plans, to not let anybody know what you want, that's just downright cruel to those you've left behind. They'll have to manage your affairs either way, and to make them start from scratch in the immediate aftermath of your death, they should be focusing on their own grief. They should be able to focus on being with their friends and your family members, to make them, in that moment, instead focus on the logistics of figuring out if you had a will. That's just mean. That's cruel. Do not do that to your people. I won't apologize for asking you to take small steps today that will make things significantly better for your people one day. Dealing with the death of someone close is always going to be difficult. It will always be tedious, even if you make a plan. But if you don't make an estate plan, it is so much worse. If you found this video helpful, hit that like button and also considering hitting the subscribe button for regular end-of-life and estate planning information.